Hi everybody, how are you? Happy Tuesday. It is time for another Tuesday Live at 5. It is actually 5 o'clock and I am quite excited because this means that my son is finished his rehearsals. His show is opening this week and I get to be back on my normal routine. So I'm going to be coming to you live every Tuesday at 5 o'clock from here on out, barring any unforeseen circumstances, of course. All right, so I am happy to be here today and to share with you these adorable projects made using the All That You Are stamp set. Now, this is a stamp set that is easily overlooked in the Occasions catalog, and that is because it's actually printed on the inside front cover. So here's my Occasions catalog. All right, I open the cover, and there is the All That You Are stamp set. It's right below Shelley's message, and it's easily overlooked. A lot of people, when they open the catalog, just want to go right to the good stuff, and they kind of skip over those first couple of pages. And this stamp set is one that easily gets missed. It's one that I missed initially, and it wasn't until my second or third reading through the catalog that I actually noticed it. And it wasn't until I saw a lot of really cute projects with it that I actually purchased it. So I am here to show you some cute projects with this set today and show you a couple of little techniques. I haven't done any heat embossing on camera before, and so I'm going to do that with you today and then show you a technique that uses heat embossing as well, which is this card. So today we're actually going to start with a pretty straightforward one, and then we'll get into the ones with the techniques. So we're starting with this one today, and it features some coloring using the Stampin' Blends. Now I love this color scheme because it's nice and soft and delicate, perfect for spring. And this stamp set is perfect for coloring with the Stampin' Blends, okay? So Stampin' Blends, one of the nice things about this set is it has nice, dark, solid lines, which make it easy to color with the blends because you don't get any bleed, okay? So my color scheme for this, I'll just show you the colors of blends that I use. I used the dark and light Petal Pink. I used the dark and light soft Seafoam. Oh, I'm missing one. Oh, there it is. I used the dark and light Pool Party, and then I used the light Highland Heather. Okay, so those are the colors that I used. Now I have gone ahead and colored a bunch of the images on here ahead of time, just in the interest of getting through this video in a timely manner. I did want to mention how I stamped these images. So I used the, oh, look at that, dimensional backings. Anybody else find those in the strangest of places? So I did stamp this large floral image on some shimmery white cardstock. So this is cardstock that has a little bit of a sheen to it. It probably doesn't show up all that well on the camera, but when you look at it, it has a little bit of a sheen and it's quite pretty. And I love using the blends on it because of that coating on it. It just allows you a little bit more blend time when you're coloring with these alcohol markers. So what I did is I stamped my large floral image sort of in that bottom corner, and then I turned my cardstock and my stamp, and then I stamped the other corner with using the other part of the image. Okay, now I stamped this using not Memento Black, as we are all taught to use when stamping with the Stampin' Blends. I actually used Basic Gray. So this is classic ink in Basic Gray. Now you'll notice this is quite a soft image. So what I did is I actually inked my stamp and then stamped off once on my grid paper before I stamped on my cardstock. And that gave me that nice soft gray, which is perfect for this delicate color scheme. So I'm going to show you just how I colored some of these images. As I said, I've already colored several of them just in the interest of getting things done here. So these little teeny tiny flowers, I used the light Highland Heather, and I just used the brush tip, and you barely have to touch those little flowers to color them in. Okay, and then on the center of the large flower as well, I used some of that same color just to add a little color to the center of the flowers. Okay. Now, these little tulips up here, I used my Pool Party. So I started with the light Pool Party, and I'm going to color the petals with the light. Okay, and then I'm going to bring in my dark, and I'm just going to add some shadow sort of just along the bottom. So I'm just kind of coming in along the bottom there. And then back in with the light, and I'm just going to pull that in and blend it out. Okay, so really simple, but very soft. This reminds me of robin's eggs, this color at this time of year. Okay, now the little stamens there on the flowers, I took my dark Petal Pink, which is the same color I used for the large flowers. Okay, I used the dark and light Petal Pink. I'll show you that in a minute. And I just colored the stamens using that marker. Okay, now for the leaves here, I'm gonna bring in my light, soft sea foam. And I colored the leaves completely with the light, including the stem, just all the way down. Okay, and then I'm going to come back in with my dark, and I'm going to add some shadows here. Okay, so I kind of went along the veins in the leaves, and then I just added a little bit of shadow along the stem. And then again, I'm going to come back with my light and just blend that out just to add a little extra dimension. Okay, and that's all there is to that. Pretty simple. All right, now you'll notice on my sample that I have 2 additional flowers here, and those are actually separate flowers that are from the stamp set. They're these 2 here. And the cool thing about these is that they coordinate with a set of dies from the holiday catalog. So the holiday catalog, there's a set of dies called Frosted Bouquet, and they are still available. They will be in the new annual catalog. And these flowers from the All That You Are set actually coordinate with, now watch on camera, I'm not gonna be able to get these to line up. They do coordinate. It should go, there we go. They line up. So there's the small one, okay? And then my large one is over here. So that coordinates perfectly. So I stamped these and actually went ahead and die cut them out ahead of time. Again, just in the interest of time, get the rest of my little bits out here. And so what I did, here are my 2 flowers, okay? They're plain. I cut them also, or stamped them also on the Shimmery White, okay? But I'm gonna show you how I colored these now. So I'm gonna come in with my light Petal Pink, and I kind of worked on 3 petals at a time. I didn't want to color the whole flower because I didn't want that ink to completely dry before I wanted to blend it out with the dark. So I'm coming in with the light, I'm coloring 3 petals on my flower with the light, okay? Then I'm going to come back in with the dark and I'm going to add shadow. So along that bottom edge and sort of where the petals overlap, and again along the edge and the side. Okay, so I'm not sure how well you can see that, but can you see the darker shadow there? Okay. All right, now I'm going to come back in with my light, and I'm going to blend that out. And I'm not going to blend it completely. I'm kind of leaving the top of the petal without a second layer of the light, and that just adds sort of a third level of shading there. Okay, and that's all there is to it. So now I'm going to go on and color my last 3 petals on this one with the light. So this again is the light Petal Pink. Okay, and then I'm going to come back in with my dark. Now this is the center of my flower, so I'm going to have more shadow in the center, right? It's going to be darker there. So I'm coming along where my petals overlap and then adding some darker color to the center of the flower. And then again, I'm going to come in with my light and just pull that dark color up so that it blends out. Okay? Pretty simple, right? These markers, the Stampin' Blends, are absolutely fantastic to color with. You do not need a lot of experience. You do not need to be an artist by any means. I am not. I'm a musician, for goodness sake. I am not a visual artist at all. But the nice thing about these markers is it makes you feel like an artist. It makes you feel like you know what you're doing because they're so easy to use. Okay, so there's my small flower. I've just laid down a layer of the light. And then again, this is like a shadow on the bottom of a petal. So I'm going to make that dark. And then I'm just going to come along, again, where the petals overlap. And then my center as well. My center is going to be dark. Okay. And then one more time with the light, I'm just going to pull that out and just blend those petals and the center so that it just kind of fades into the lighter shade. And that's all there is to it. Really simple, right? Okay, now again, I'm going to take my Highland Heather. This is the light Highland Heather, and I'm just going to add a little bit of that purple to those centers of the flowers, just so that they are the same as my large flower. Okay, that's all there is to it. All right, now these are going to go on to my base here using some dimensionals. So if you look at my sample, I added the large one, and you'll notice that I extended them off the edge of the page. That's totally okay, because this is a small piece of cardstock. This is actually 5 inches by 3 3/4. Okay, so I've got lots of room for overhang and still have it fit into the envelope. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add the dimensionals to that. Pop off those backings, and we'll put that guy down there. Okay, and then we'll add one onto here, and this one's going to kind of sit up here, kind of like that. Okay, so there are my additional flowers. Now here I have a piece of Petal Pink cardstock. It is 5 1/8 by 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. Now on my original sample, I embossed this using the Big Shot and the subtle embossing folder. I'm not going to take the time to do that right now. I'm just going to go ahead and assemble this card just so that we can get on to the next one. Now this is actually going to go on with some dimensionals. I popped it up just to give it, again, a little bit of extra interest. So when I'm trying to pop up large panels, I first of all start with the corners, okay, and then I come along and fill in the middle, and then I usually add a couple extras in the middle like that, so it doesn't get crushed when it's in the envelope. Okay, now this is also a great time to use up the edges of your dimensionals, right? If you have a sheet that's you finished all the dimensionals on, those edge pieces are perfect for popping up larger panels like this one. I tend to save my used dimensional sheets just for times like this, but at the moment I don't have any, so we're going to use just the dimensionals as they are. All right, so we're going to go ahead and center this on our Petal Pink panel, right about there, okay? And then I have a Smokey Slate card base. This is 5 1/2 by 8 1/2, and it's scored in the middle at 4 1/4. So this is top half of an 8 1/2 by 11 piece of cardstock. So I'm going to fold that along the card base, or along the score line rather. And I'm going to go ahead and adhere this onto the front of my card. So I'll add a little bit of fast fuse here. And we'll pop this on, just like that. When you have a narrow border like this, you just want to take your time to make sure you get it straight. Okay, just like that. And then finally, I added a sentiment. This is the Happy Birthday sentiment that is from the All That You Are stamp set. And I'm going to stamp that in basic gray. So I'm going to ink up my stamp. Now, again, I want it to be as light as my stamped colored images, right? So if I do this full strength, it's going to be too dark. So I'm going to stamp off once on my grid paper and then stamp on my cardstock, and I get that nice soft gray. And then I am using, what I realized after I made the card, is a retired punch. This is a 1 3/8 scallop circle punch that actually retired last year and somehow was still in my stash. So I used it. You could use, certainly use your dies if you have them, circle dies, to cut this out if you wanted a scallop look, but the punch is no longer available. So there is my sentiment. Now I have a 1 1/2 inch plain circle punched from Petal Pink cardstock, and I'm going to go ahead and pop that up on there. So we'll just throw a couple of dimensionals on there. Okay, I'll marry you. And we'll center that on there. The tricky thing about doing this when you're not right over top of your work surface is trying to get them centered. And then that is going to go onto the front of my card with a little bit of Tombow, which I forgot to bring, so we will use a bit of fast fuse there. Okay, and that's going to go on right about there to fill in some of that empty space. Okay, really simple, but very soft and pretty birthday card. Okay, now I'll show you what I did on the inside of this one. I just added a Whisper White panel. I stamped the floral image again, just in Smokey Slate ink to coordinate with the card base, and then added another sentiment from the stamp set, also in Smokey Slate. Okay, so that is project 1 done and done. Let's get some of these things out of the way. and we'll move on and do some embossing. I'm excited about this. I love heat embossing. I have to say, heat embossing is the thing that got me hooked on stamping. The first time I saw heat embossing, I thought it was the most magical thing I had ever seen. And I said to the demonstrator at the time that I needed everything required to do that. And I was hooked. I was in forever. Okay, so our next card, where did I put my samples? There they are. Next card we're going to work on is this one. So this one features a watercolor wash over some heat embossing, okay? So I'm going to show you how to do that. There's a couple of little tricks for this to keep it tidy. I'm going to start with a piece of watercolor paper. So really important when you're trying to do a watercolor wash to get the best results. Oh, hi April, how are you? To get a nice soft watercolor wash, you want to use watercolor paper. Okay, so Stampin' Up! Carries this. It is in the catalog. You can also find it at your local art store. Okay, Michael's carries it. You can buy watercolor paper there. There are all sorts of places that you can get watercolor paper. It's also from me, from Stampin' Up! And so this is a piece of watercolor paper that is cut to 4 by 5 1/4 inches. Okay, now, when you are heat embossing, I'm not sure how many of you have heat embossed before, but I'm going to give you some tips. I've had people come to my classes and say, oh, I hate heat embossing. I hate it. I can never get a good image. It always looks terrible. It doesn't work for me. I can't heat emboss. Well, after a little bit of sort of investigation, I discover that the people who struggle with heat embossing do not know what an embossing buddy is. Oh, hi, Angie. Hi, all the way from Australia. Wow, it's morning there. Well, it's afternoon here. It's almost dinner time here, Angie. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you had a good evening and you've had a good breakfast. So this is the embossing buddy. Now, this is a well-loved embossing buddy. But this is an essential tool when you want to heat emboss, okay? So this is just a little pouch. It has... what is in this? Some kind of a clay powder in this, okay? And somebody told me what it is once, and I can't remember what it is. But what it does is essentially takes away any static or oils or stray adhesive, and it just allows your cardstock to be totally free from that, so that when you stamp with your sticky ink, called Versamark, your image is the only thing that attracts the embossing powder. Okay, so what we're going to do, thanks for sharing, Angie, thanks so much. Hey, Michelle, talcum powder inside? I don't think it is talcum powder, actually, Angie. It is a special, it's made of a special clay. I had a friend of mine who was a drafts person who actually used to use these for making blueprints, and they use this exact sort of thing. And I can't remember what she said was inside it, but I will ask her and I will report back. All right, so I'm going to take my large floral image and my Versamark ink. So this is a sticky ink. You'll see on the lid it says Watermark Stamp Pad. If you stamp this on colored cardstock, you're going to get a watermark look of your image. Okay. Now, it's also very helpful for heat embossing because it has a long dry time. It stays wet. Okay. It is magical, Michelle. You're right. So I'm going to take my Versamark pad and I'm going to ink up my full stamp. Now you'll notice I'm taking the pad to the stamp. That's because this is a large stamp, and if I try to do it this way, I'm probably going to miss part of the image. By taking my stamp pad to the stamp, I can actually fully see that I'm covering the image, and it kind of gets shiny. Okay, and I know that I've covered the image completely. So I'm going to stamp, and I want to cover this piece of watercolor, that's the word I'm looking for, paper, completely. Now, you're not going to be able to see a blessed thing on here, okay? But if I turn this a certain way, I can see my stamped image right there, okay? So I'm going to rotate this, and I'm going to ink it again, and I'm going to stamp again, and I'm going to take great care not to overlap my original stamped image, okay? And again, you're not going to be able to see this. You're going to have to take my word for it. You'll be able to see it in a few minutes. Okay, so now I'm going to stamp again. And you'll notice I'm rotating my paper and I'm rotating my stamp so that I get a different portion of the stamp each time that I stamp with it. And that creates that sort of random looking background. Okay, I'm going to stamp once there and that should do it. So now I'm going to set this aside and I'm going to bring in the magical embossing powder. So here is our white embossing powder. And it doesn't look like much. It's just a little bottle of well, powder, and it's not sparkly or shiny or anything. It looks quite uninteresting actually. But I'm going to set my cardstock that I stamped inside my tray here, and I'm going to sprinkle it all over with this embossing powder. And it's kind of like magic, or it's like a secret message ink, okay? I'm not sure if you can see it now, but suddenly I can see the image of my stamped images here. Can you see those? I don't know if they show up on the camera all that well. But suddenly I can see all those flowers that I stamped. And they look very pretty. I did a good job of not overlapping any images. So now what I'm gonna do, or what I would do, I'm not gonna take the time to do it. I will do it on the next cards when you can actually see it, because it's pretty hard to see white on white, is I will take my heat tool, which is this guy here, and I'm going to heat this. Now again, I will show you how to do that on the next card. You're not going to be able to see much white on white, but I do have one that I have already heated, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. So here is a already heated and set embossed panel. Okay, so I'm not sure how well you can see that, but the images are all there and they are permanent. They're not going anywhere. It's a raised sort of shiny white image. Okay, now we're going to add color, and now you're going to get to see the image pop. So to do a watercolor wash, there are a couple of ways you can do it. You can use your ink pad. So this is a gorgeous grape ink pad. I can take my ink pad and press really hard on the lid and squish it and get ink into the lid. Okay, that's one way to do it. And if you don't have re-inkers, that's totally, you could do it this way. I'm going to actually use some re-inkers because I can actually get more ink on the paper quicker using re-inkers. So here I just have a random acrylic block that I'm using as my palette. I'm going to put a couple of drops of Highland Heather re-inker and a couple of drops of gorgeous Grape right on my block. And the nice thing about using the acrylic blocks is they wipe up really easily. And I'm going to grab some paper towel. Now this is strictly to keep my grid paper clean for the next card. It has nothing to do, it's not necessary. It's just going to keep things a little bit tidy here. And then I'm going to take an aqua painter. This is essentially a paintbrush with a little water well in the handle. So we carry these in the catalog. And what I can do then is take and squeeze some water onto that. So this is the Highland Heather. So I'm making a nice wash of that rich purple. And then I can take and wash it over my cardstock. And you're going to see that image appear. It's like magic. It's just the coolest thing ever. So I'm going to take this Highland Heather and I'm going to wash it all the way down across the front of my card. Okay, it's a nice soft purple. It's amazing how light it looks when you brush it onto your cardstock. When it's in a puddle here on the block, it looks quite dark. Okay, so there is my Highland Heather. Nice and soft. Isn't that pretty? All right, now we are going to take some of the gorgeous Grape. So again, I'm going to squeeze a little bit more water and create my palette here. And then I'm going to start at the bottom with the gorgeous Grape because I want to create an ombre look. So I'm not going to go all the way up with the gorgeous Grape. I'm just going to kind of wash up from the bottom. And as I pull that color up, it's going to kind of fade into the Highland Heather. Okay, so I end up with a really soft ombre, and I'm going to add extra ink down at the bottom so that it's got that extra vibrancy at the bottom, and then it just sort of fades up to the top. And that's all there is to it. Isn't it easy to do a watercolor wash? Now, the trick with this is you have to let it dry, right? We have to be patient and let it dry. You can use your heat tool to speed up the dry time. That is totally a thing, and I have done it in the past. However, just getting some stuff out of the way here. In the interest of getting this video done, because I have to get to another meeting this evening, I have one that is already dry. Okay, so here is one that I did earlier that has already dried. Okay, so there is my ombre panel with that watercolor wash. And now we can go ahead and finish assembling our card. Okay, so I'm going to dump all these little bits and pieces out here. And we are going to get to town. Now, you'll notice on this card that I have this lovely purple ribbon with, isn't that a yummy purple, April? I know, I love it. And I'm not even a fan of purple. That's the crazy thing. I can't get enough of gorgeous Grape and Highland Heather. So I have this purple ribbon here with silver metallic on the edge, and you may be going to your catalog and going, I don't remember seeing that ribbon. It's not coming in the new catalog. It is our current ribbon that I have used Stampin' Blends to color. Now you'll see a little bit left over here from what I colored last night. I'm going to show you how to do that. It is the easiest thing ever. So this is our white metallic edge ribbon. So it's just plain white with a silver, a silver edge. And I'm taking my dark Highland Heather blends, okay? And all I'm gonna do, watch this, it's so easy. I'm just gonna take and literally color that ribbon. So I'm just coloring the white ribbon. Like, honestly, there is nothing easier. Okay, that's it. And you'll notice, because these are alcohol markers, it soaks right through. So you've got nice color on both sides of the ribbon. This part here is darker because that's the part that I had done earlier. It's going to be hidden on the back of my card anyway. But look at that. How easy was that? Like, so easy to get custom color. Okay. All right. So now, oh, who's watching? Hi, Wendy. Are you watching from Australia too? So I'm going to trim that off. Okay. And so now I have a beautiful piece of ribbon that matches my card perfectly. That I've just colored with my blends. Isn't that beautiful? So now I'm going to go ahead and put some glue dots on the ends of my ribbon. And this is still a little damp from the alcohol and the marker, so they may not stick all that well, but we'll work with it. And I'm going to wrap the ends around that panel. And now my ribbon is perfectly matched to my card. Okay, now here I have a piece of gorgeous grape cardstock that is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and glue that down onto my, I'm going to glue my watercolor paper onto my panel. And look at that. What happened there? Did I miscut that? No, I might have miscut my watercolor paper. I did. This is only 5 inches. That's okay. We'll have a little bit of an extra border there. Not a biggie. All right, so I'm going to take some fast fuse. And I'm going to apply it. Now the trick with fast fuse on watercolor paper is you have to press really hard to get it to stick. Fast fuse does not love watercolor paper for some reason, and it likes to pop off. So you kind of have to add a little extra on there to get it to stick. Okay, and I'm going to just align this with the top and sides and not worry about that extra bit at the bottom. The joy of live video. Hi Jen, how are ya? Thanks for tuning in. All right, so now I have some little vellum bits and bobs that I punched here. So these little vellum guys are punched using the sprig punch. Now this is the punch that you need. If there is only one punch that you ever buy, this is it, okay? These are awesome for every season to add to just make DIY embellishments, okay? These are little sprigs. And then I also have a couple of sets of leaves here that I punched with the vellum as well. So all I'm going to do is take and adhere these sort of behind my ribbon using some glue dots. I'm just sort of arranging them. There's not really a right or wrong way to do this. There's a couple there, and we'll put a couple down the bottom, down here, and we'll add one more down here. So I'm just tucking these in behind my ribbon piece. Okay. And then I'm going to stamp my sentiment. So I have a scrap of Whisper White cardstock here, and I'm going to stamp my thank you sentiment using, where'd my Grape ink pad go? There it is. Some basic gray ink. Okay, so I'm going to ink this up and stamp it on my scrap, just like that. And then I'm going to use the story label punch to punch this out. Now this was available in the month of March as part of the special celebration coordination promotion. And then it went away. But the good news is this is coming back in the new annual catalog. And I'm so excited because I love the size and the shape of this punch. It works really well with a lot of our sentiments. So I'm centering that in my punch. And then I'm going to grab my gorgeous Grape ink pad, which is hiding over here. And I'm going to add a little sprig. So this little guy is, again, part of the stamp set. And I'm going to ink it, stamp it off once, and then add just that extra little bit of color behind my sentiment. And then we're ready to pop this onto our card. So we're going to add a couple of dimensionals on the back of our label. And get rid of our backings. Hi Betsy, how are you today? Hope you're doing well. And we're gonna center that right over our ribbon, just like that, okay? Now I have a card base here. This is Highland Heather. This is the same size as the previous card base. So it's 5.5 by 8.5, and it's scored in the middle at 4.25 inches. I'm gonna fold it in half along my score line. And then this is gonna get glued onto here, just like that, okay? So we'll add a little bit of fast fuse. And we'll pop this onto the front of our card. Okay, now this is gonna bug me, this uneven border, so I am gonna fix this later and I will post my solution to this problem. I don't have time to do it right now on live video, but I will post a solution. I have a great idea for how I'm gonna fix this little oopsie, okay? So this is a tip for when you mismeasure, how to fix your card, okay? So the last touch on this, well, not last touch, but the next touch is to add some of these yummy sequins. So these are the, just our basic sequin collection, the self-adhesive sequins. I'm gonna add a few of these onto the front of my card. And then my last step, and I'm not sure this shows up on the original, is to add some shimmer and shine using your friend and mine, Wink of Stella. So I'm gonna take, and I'm adding the wink to the flowers. So each one of the flowers is going to shine and pop out from the background and against the leaves. So there's one flower. We'll make this all shimmery and shiny. You probably can't see this on the camera. You're gonna have to take my word for it. We'll add a little bit to this, and we'll add just a bit down here, and this little guy. Oh, and we got a little flower here, do we? Yes, we have part of the flower here. Or is that a leaf? No, here's the flower. And we'll add a little bit to this. Now you want to be careful when you're winking because the wink will pick up some of that color. You'll notice I started at the light and worked my way down to the dark. Can you see the color that the wink has picked up? Okay, so if I went from the dark to the light, some of that would transfer, okay? So you that's just a word of warning when you're doing this. You want to make sure you start at the light and work down, okay? Now I'll just wipe all that ink off of there and we are good to go. All right, so I'll bring in my correctly measured card. There's the finished card. And then on the inside, I added a Whisper White panel. This is 4 by 5.25 inches. And I stamped my floral image again in the gorgeous Grape. Okay, that is that one. Done and done. All right, last card is my favorite. I always save my favorite for last. This one is super simple, but it has such a wow factor. Can you see the shine and shimmer on that? Now this is, I started on a little bit of a copper and navy kick last week as I was playing around with another stamp set. And I loved it so much, I just had to try it with this one. So I'm gonna show you how I did this, and I'm actually gonna show you how to heat emboss. We're gonna do it live and on camera because you can watch the magic happen as it goes here. Whoop, wrong tray. Let's grab the right tray. Here we go. Okay. So we are going to start out the same way we did for the last card. Okay, so I have my panel here. This is again 4 inches by 5.25. This is Blueberry Bushel. Okay, so it's not navy, it's a little bit lighter than the navy, and it is really pretty because the copper just seems to pop against it. Okay, so it's 4 by 5.25. And again, before I start stamping anything with my Versamark, I'm going to take my embossing buddy and rub it all over. Okay, and that is going to get rid of any moisture, oils from my hands, sticky fingers. Okay, and the trick once you've done this is not to handle that cardstock anymore. Okay, you want to make sure once you've done the embossing buddy that you don't touch it because you're going to undo the work that you have just done. All right, so there's my embossing buddy. I'm going to bring in my stamp again. And I'm going to ink it up with the Versamark. So same thing, I'm taking the pad to the stamp, making sure that I cover the whole thing. Okay, so now I'm going to stamp up from that bottom left corner. And this, because it's a darker color, you're going to be able to see it a little bit better. Okay, can you see that image there? Okay, now I'm going to flip the cardstock around. I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees. I'm going to ink my stamp up again, and this time I'm going to come in, same corner, right? But I'm actually going to rotate my stamp a little bit so I don't get quite as much of that large flower and I get more of these tulips. Okay, so there are my stamped images. Okay, that's all I'm going to stamp. Not much stamping on this card. And now I'm going to bring in a tray and my copper embossing powder. Now this copper embossing powder looks like nothing. It looks like sand almost. Can you see that? Okay, it's quite coarse. The white powder is quite a bit finer actually than the copper. Oh, and there's a stray little bit of paper there. We'll try not to get that onto our card. And so I'm going to sprinkle this all over my stamped image. Okay, I'm not being careful. I'm just making sure I've covered the whole image. And then tap off the excess. Now you can see that, and it looks quite rough, doesn't it? That powder, the copper powder, is quite coarse, and it doesn't look like it's going to do a very good job. And I've had people say, oh, the copper powder isn't very nice. I don't really like it. But you have to wait for the magic, okay? And the magic is going to come right now. So I'm going to bring in my heat tool. So this is also a tool that is available in our catalog. It has two settings. The low setting is for drying ink. This is what I would use if I were going to dry the watercolor wash that we did on the last card, okay? But when I turn it up to the second setting, it gets quite hot, and it's going to set my embossing powder. So here we go. It's a little bit noisy. I apologize. I'll try to talk over top of it. So I'm going to turn it on. I don't want to touch this tip, okay? It gets very hot. Now, when I'm embossing, I'm going to hold my heat tool in one spot, quite close to my cardstock. So I'm about, I don't know, 1.5 inches above my cardstock. And I'm going to hold it there until I see the powder start to melt. Okay, what I get from a lot of people who try heat embossing is they do this. They use the blow dryer approach. And when you do that, you get uneven heating. So you're going to have some parts of your embossing that are set, and then you'll have other parts that are scorched and overheated. Okay, so you can probably see, I'm going to move this out of the way a little bit. Can you see how that powder is starting to melt and become shiny? And you want it to melt enough so that you lose that coarse texture of the cardstock. It's going to melt and you're going to get a nice smooth image. So once one area is set, you're going to gradually move your heat tool across until you've hit all of the areas, okay? And you don't want to be in a hurry with this. This is not something you can rush. Take your time and make sure your image is completely set before you move on to the next area. Okay, that is done. Look at that, isn't it beautiful? This is just such a beautiful stamp image and embossed. It is just stunning. Yes, it is beautiful, Marie. I agree. It's really stunning. All right, that is basically it on this card. The rest is really, really straightforward. So I started with just a plain piece of copper foil on my card. And then I thought, I wonder what it would look like if I added some texture. So I ran just a strip. This is 1.5 inches wide by 4-inch strip of copper foil. And I ran it through my Big Shot using the subtle embossing folder. And it adds the coolest texture to that foil. So when I put this on my card, I'm going to put it down right about here. Okay, I want just that flower to kind of be peeking out from behind it. Now, if you're not really happy about covering up that much, you could certainly turn it this way and have the flower kind of hanging down. It's totally up to you. I kind of like the flower peeking out from behind. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and glue that onto my card. And I notice that this is cut a little bit wide, so we're going to trim it a little bit off. So the height that you put this at is going to kind of be determined by how high you stamp your flower. This one is mine is about 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom edge. Okay, now that's a little long. I was seriously out of it when I was prepping these pieces last night. I should not cut and prep late at night. That is the moral of that story. Okay, but look at that nice texture, and it just works so well with that embossed image. Okay, hi Shirley, thanks for watching. All right, next I'm going to add some ribbon. Now, you may have missed this ribbon in the catalog. This is absolutely gorgeous ribbon, and I haven't used it very much. Did you know that we carried ribbon that has copper metallic on it? Like, this is just beautiful ribbon. This is from the Tea Room Combo Pack. It's part of the Tea Room Suite, and this is 1/8 of an inch ribbon. And so it's very vanilla with copper metallic trim on it. So I'm just going to take and add some glue dots to here. So again, this is my ribbon saving trick. I am not fond of wasting ribbon by having it wrapped around the back side of a card that no one sees. So I like to trim shorter pieces and just glue them on and save that ribbon that I would have used to wrap it around the back for other projects. So when I have narrow ribbon like this, sometimes adding that extra piece just adds a little bit more weight to it. And I just love the way it works with the lines on the embossing. I just find that it adds a really cool extra little design element. All right. Now on my sample, you will see that I have a copper layer behind it, a copper mat. And if you're like me and you hate the idea of covering up a whole big piece of copper foil and hiding it behind a panel, this is my solution for you. Okay, so I've cut a piece of copper foil that is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8 inches. And then I used my second largest stitched rectangle die, and I cut a big panel out of the middle of it. Okay, so that panel I can use for other projects. I've got a big piece of foil that I can still use for other things. But when I go to layer this behind my panel, no one will ever know that there's a big chunk missing from the middle. So that's another little savings feature for you. So I'm going to take my card base. So this again, same size as the other two, easy to remember, 5 1/2 by 8 1/2 inches, and it's scored at 4 1/4. So this is Blueberry Bushel ink. I'm folding it in half, or not ink, Blueberry Bushel cardstock, folding it in half along my score line. Now I'm going to go ahead and glue my frame on first. Okay, so I'm going to center that on the card front. And for this, I'm actually going to use some glue dots because, again, I forgot my Tombow. Normally I would use Tombow for this, but forgot to bring it over here where I am sitting to shoot this video. So I'm just going to put it in the corners for now. And we're going to pop that onto the front of our card, just like that. Okay, and you'll notice that I've also embossed this piece of foil. Okay, it's got that same texture that I used on the panel for the front. And now I can go ahead and glue this on, and I get this beautiful textured mat, but I haven't wasted a whole bunch of foil cardstock. So add a little fast fuse there. And we're gonna just pop this on over my faux mat. There we go. All right, and then my last touch is to add my sentiment. So I've gone ahead and done this ahead of time, again, in the interest of getting through this video in a timely way. Where did I put my, oh, there it is. I'm using my Taylor tag punch. Okay, I've shown you many tricks using this punch to punch your banner ends on other videos, but this time I'm actually gonna use it as intended. So here I have a piece of very vanilla cardstock that I have stamped just the thank you portion of this stamp and Versamark and heat emboss. Now I'm going to show you what I do to my stamps. I am notorious for mutilating my stamps. Okay, so this stamp comes with the thank you and it says for all that you are and all that you do. However, sometimes you don't want that part, you just want the thank you. So all you do is you cut your stamp. You just take your snips and you cut it. Okay, when you want to use both, you mount them together. When you only want the thank you, you don't have to worry about masking or trying to hide the other part. You just stamp it and you're good to go. All right, so here is my thank you. I'm going to pop it into my Taylor tag punch, center the image, and pop it out. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some dimensionals on the back of this guy. I'm just going to worry about top and bottom for now. And then that is going to be centered on the front of my card. Not centered, but centered side to side. And centered on my ribbon here. Just like that. Super simple. Isn't that pretty? On the inside, again, I just added another piece of very vanilla cardstock and stamped my floral image in the Blueberry Bushel. Okay? Super simple. Love, love, love this floral image. So again, this is the All That You Are stamp set. Okay, it is in the Occasions catalog. It is retiring, so it will be gone when the Occasions catalog retires at the beginning of June. All right, so I'm going to bring in our 3 projects again, just so you can see them all together. There's 1, 2, and 3. There you go. Give this stamp set another look if you haven't already. If you do own it, pull it out and try some of these projects. The watercolor wash is gorgeous. It is a stunning embossed image, and it's also really fun to color with the blends. Okay? Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks to all my friends in Australia who stopped by today, and I will see you again next week for another Tuesday Live at 5. Bye for now.